Hi there, this is Haley with Bygone Blooms, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I made this dried flower frame and some frames like it. So just for some context, in today's video I'll be talking about where I got this frame, how I pressed my flowers, and what types of flowers work well. So I just press my flowers in a notebook that is really an art notebook, a watercolor paper notebook, and I just set heavy books on top. All of the flowers from this video in the frame that I just had and in the video that I show are flowers that I either gathered from the side of the road or grew in my own garden. So I grow in a zone 6B or 7A. I usually tend to err on the side of caution and just say that we're a 6B because it's a bummer when things get lost to the cold. So all of these things are things that are either perennial, or I grew them from seed as an annual, or like I said, I got them from the side of the road. When I plant my garden, even my flower beds, I planned for things that I could use as cuts for cut flower gardening, with the goal of being a flower farmer. But one of the things that I wanted to look into at the end of this last season was what I could do with leftovers. So maybe there are things in my garden that weren't awesome for cut flowers necessarily, but they were still beautiful and I wanted to see if I could save them. So some of the things that I mentioned that are really good for saving are yarrow, nepeta or catmint works really well, salvia works well, ferns, hydrangeas, and all sorts of things like that. I also take some things from the side of the road like Queen Anne's lace and grasses and things that work really well in the vase as well, but just make a really beautiful display when you save them and press them into frames. So thanks so much for watching, and let's get into it. One of the things I really like to gather from the side of the road is this false Queen Anne's lace, and in some of my other pictures you'll see that the heads are bigger, and I literally just walk along the ditches on my road to pick that up, and I've gotten a ton of use from that. I also have gotten this from the side of the road. It's just the seed heads of one of the grasses that grows wild. Here you can see some of the bigger heads of the Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot. Here's one of my favorite things, which is salvia, and it is really nice as kind of like spires or long plumes. It dries really well and keeps some of its purple color. Here's some more of that, and you can see some ferns in the back. One of my favorite things to dry is this. It's a fancy oregano kind. I'll put the name of it in the description. It smells like regular oregano, but it has almost like a purpley look to the blooms. You can see it, or to the leaves, you can see a little bit more there, and in some of my other pictures I'll point it out to y'all too, but I really like how that looks dried. Here's some more ferns. This is Weigelia from a bush. I just cut it off and it's worked really well, and then there is more salvia, and you can also see here I've got a one stem of a coneflower. And that dries pretty well too. So I'll show you some more examples in the frames that I have, but those are just some things that dry well for me. Again, salvia and nepeta and that kind of thing. So today I'm working with a frame that says it's for a 4x4 picture, but it's really 8x8, and because it's a floating frame and we're using pressed flowers, I can put my flowers all the way up to the edge. So I got this frame at Hobby Lobby specifically. I have ordered online, but you run the risk of them being broken in the mail. This frame says that it was $19.99, but I bought it when frames were half off, so really for me it was like $10. And you'll notice it says unscrew to open, and it's got these screws on the side. So I just have my Phillips screwdriver and I'll unscrew it. And what I like about this type of frame specifically, I've done a couple different ones. I like that it opens in the front and that it screws so that you're not having to press foam back into the sides. I find that kind of makes it difficult when you have to squish your flowers, but we wouldn't even notice that this opens from the front. So from the front you don't even know, and you'll screw it tight from the back. So you just slide your glass out like this, and there's plenty of room. You can see these channels on the sides. There's plenty of room to slide your glass back in. You just want to make sure that your flowers aren't super thick. So I wouldn't go any thicker than this, And I'm sure on the camera it doesn't look very thick at all, but when you're talking about a tiny space in between glass, if you do something too thick, you just run the risk of cracking your glass as you try to shove it back in there. What I like to do is to take the frame out of the picture, and I will just work with the glass that's inside. So I set my glass up. It is a little bit of a pain to get rid of these stickers that they have inside. They have it stuck on with a little drop of glue, and I just use a razor blade, scrape that off, and you'll notice that they've got a sticker on the back too. So I'll just use my razor blade to work on that here in just a minute. But let me show you what this looks like in my process. So what I like to do is to start from the bottom and just start placing things and seeing what I think. A lot of the times I will choose maybe like a focal flower. A trick that I have for this Queen Anne's lace that you can see is tiny, is I'll just take one that's larger and maybe just a head that doesn't have a stem, and I'll just add them together so that in the frame it looks like it's one flower, and this one has a nice stem that fits nicely in the frame. Whereas sometimes I just have room for the heads when I press them. So I'll just stack those together, and when you press them down in the glass, it's not too thick. I like to find pieces that I feel like frame those flowers nicely. This grass feels a little too big for me right now. I might cut off a piece of it and use it later, but I do like the shape of this one. This is a piece of yarrow. It was just like cream colored yarrow. I think that looks nice, so I'll go with that for now. I also really like this piece, but that is way too full, so I'm just going to cut off some of it, and I'll use that later, these pieces that I'm cutting off. So give me 1 second. This feels a lot more manageable for the size of frame that I have. This piece has some probably bug damage, so we'll take that piece off. But I like how that kind of tucks right in there. And you'll notice I'm leaving the stems long. I'll cut them where I want them in just a minute. I can even take some of the pieces I've cut off, and if I tuck them down underneath, you won't even know from the front that they weren't actually intended to go there. Okay, so I like how that kind of frames the Queen Anne's lace. And this again is some of that special oregano I got. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll look that up for y'all. I feel like I need a spike or something on this side, so I'm going to cut off a piece of my salvia. Maybe 2 pieces. We'll see what we think. I like how the salvia is tall, but it doesn't have near as much movement as some of the other plants do. But I can layer these stems, so it looks like that salvia is coming out from the other one, and it leans more that way. I like the kind of organic shape and the movement that it has, the curve, I guess, rather than just being straight up and down. It almost looks like a scene that you would see, or like wildflowers in a meadow or something like that. All right, so here is my final frame. And what I like to do is just set the glass back over top. I've got my frame here, and remember this front piece, the piece that folds down is in the front. So sometimes with your frames, you have to flip your glass around, just like flip your whole piece around to fit it back in. This is a good time to make sure there's not any like extra little pieces, and if there were little fuzzies or anything hanging out, I would just blow into the glass to make sure that they're not in my final piece. And then what I do is, like I mentioned that channel earlier, it's kind of easier if you turn it to the side. You just want to make sure that both pieces of your glass are fitting into the channel on both sides. You can just slide it in. Sorry if it's hard to see with my other stuff going on. Here, scoot that out of the way. And I like to just gently push it in. If you really feel like you have to force it, you're probably on the verge of breaking your glass. I've done that before with different frames. This frame, like I said, because there's that channel in there that you can see, you can tell, I mean, there's a fairly good bit of space between the glass. When you screw this back on, it tightens that piece at the bottom down. But I find because there's some space, it keeps me from risking cracking my glass. So if you're really feeling like you have to smush on it, probably you're about to break your glass. So I would encourage you to just stop, see if there's something that you could take out that's like really thick, and move on from there. So you can see even before I screw it down that it's really beautiful from the back too. I liked the pieces that I put facing forward. I liked the colors on them, like even this oregano, there's more purple on the front. So I chose what I wanted to face forward, but whoever you make this frame for, or in your own house or whatever, it might be visible from both sides. And that's what I love about this, because it's pretty on both sides. So just like I used my little screwdriver to open it, I'll use it to close it. And I will just be honest and say, as I'm working on this, these frames, it's not real wood. It's not super solid. It's just almost, it feels like a really thick cardboard. So when you're screwing these back in, if you're using the same kind as me, be really careful to not go too far, because if you strip your screw, then your hole is just going to be in the wrong spot. You'll have to re-drill a hole. So I like to be really gentle. You can just take off this sticker, and then here is your final frame. And these come to, I don't know if you can see it in the light, maybe just barely. There's like a little bitty hole right here and here. And it comes with a little kit so that you can hang it. So there's these like little tiny screws that you can use. And I just use my drill with a really tiny drill bit. And you can hang this little hook on here so that people can hang it on the wall. Okay, so, and don't make the mistake that I have before of sticking your tape onto the side. If you are not careful, it will just pull off the coating on here. It just looks like thick cardboard underneath. So these frames I find look really nice on the wall, but you just have to be kind of careful with them. So this is what cost me. Like I said earlier, it was $20. I got it half off when they had their frames half off. It's a $10 item that is a custom gift, or I could choose colors that I would want to go in my own house. So I'll show you some pictures of what it looks like on the wall and some other frames that I've made, but I find that this is a really good way to use pressed flowers, and you can tell I only used 6 stems. Remember, we cut off some of this oregano and used it other places. I did, I guess, 7 technically, because there's a head here and a stem. This salvia was 1 stem. So if you have time to look in your garden and to pick a few stems of things, if you have yarrow, salvia, if you live near a dirt road or anywhere that has barbed wire fences and has things growing up in the hedgerows, just pull over and cut some things, and you have enough for a frame. So again, it only cost me $10, and this is what would be a really great gift, or you could sell them, as I've done in the past. So a frame this size I would sell for $35 or $40, and again, it's not that many stems. So it doesn't take as much as if you're making like a dried bouquet, for example, or a dried wreath or something like that. That just takes a ton of stems to make something special. So thank you for growing alongside me, and I'll see you in the next one.